Everyone keeps saying, work on your self-concept, like it's some endless to-do list of journaling, shadow work, affirmations, and healing childhood wounds. But what if that's the long road? What if the truth Neville Goddard was pointing to isn't about fixing who you think you are, but dropping it altogether? What if all this time, trying to upgrade the old you is what's been keeping you stuck as that same version? See, most people are trying to heal their way into a new life, but Neville's teachings offer something radical. You don't heal your way into a new identity. You step into it. And that's what nobody's really talking about. Self-concept isn't about making the current version of you feel better. It's not about saying I'm good enough until it feels true. It's about becoming someone entirely different, someone who doesn't even have the same insecurities, doubts, or desires. The only reason something hasn't shifted yet is because, deep down, you're still waking up as the same version of you who needs it. That's the trap. You're imagining change, but being the same. You're speaking the end result, but still identifying with the middle. And if that's what's happening, then it doesn't matter how much is being visualized, affirmed, or hoped for, because reality doesn't respond to words alone. It responds to identity. It responds to who is being embodied in this moment. And the mistake most people make is thinking that if they keep adding new beliefs on top of old identity, something will change. But nothing truly shifts until the entire state of being is different. Not forced, not performed, but truly and effortlessly assumed. Not I am trying to become, but I already am. Neville never asked anyone to repeat statements like a machine. He asked people to feel it real, to enter the scene as the one who already has the desire fulfilled. And when that feeling becomes natural, not as a performance but as a presence, then the old version of self begins to dissolve on its own because it's no longer being fed by thought, by emotion, or by story. It simply fades because it no longer has a role to play. That's what self-concept really means in Neville's teachings. It's not your self-esteem, not your background, not your wounds, not your surface confidence. It's the state you wake up into. It's the identity you wear throughout the day. It's what you expect without even realizing it. And it's the one thing you never question because it feels like just who you are. But when that changes, everything changes. Reality bends not to effort, but to embodiment. It bends to being. And once this is understood, the game stops being about fixing what was broken and becomes about remembering who you've always had the power to be. Here's the part that most people don't want to admit, but once it's seen clearly, it becomes impossible to ignore. The reason things haven't changed yet isn't because the technique was wrong or the desire was too big or the timing wasn't right. The reason is simple. The same version of self is still waking up every day. The same old identity is still being worn like a familiar outfit. Even while affirming new beliefs or visualizing new outcomes, the core state of being hasn't shifted. And that's the part Neville was always pointing to. He didn't teach people to change their lives by rearranging outer facts. He showed them how to change their world by changing who they are being on the inside. What's often overlooked is that every single state of being carries its own thoughts, its own feelings, its own reactions, and its own expectations. That's why trying to think better while still being the same person doesn't create real change. You can't affirm over a state. You have to exit the state. You have to move out of it completely and stop identifying with the one who needed fixing in the first place. And this doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or pretending things don't hurt. It means realizing that your power was never in fixing the feelings. It was always in shifting the one who's feeling them. Neville's idea of assuming a new state wasn't about positive thinking. It wasn't about tricking the mind. It was about surrendering the current self and taking on a new one as naturally as changing your clothes. But the challenge is that the old self feels familiar. It feels like home, even when it hurts. It feels like safety, even when it keeps you small. So there's often a deep attachment to the identity that's actually holding everything back. The identity that says I need to manifest this to feel whole. That's the loop. That's the echo that keeps the same reality playing on repeat. And until that version of you is no longer leading the show, nothing truly changes. So the shift isn't in doing more, it's in being different. And being different doesn't mean improving the old self. It means letting go of the lens that sees life through lack, fear, or effort. It means waking up tomorrow and deciding to live as if everything has already worked out. Not because you're trying to make it happen faster, but because you finally trust that it's who you are now. It's no longer a question. It's not a negotiation. It's a quiet inner knowing that you're no longer living from the version of you who needs the change. You're living from the one who already is the change. And that's the secret most people miss. They're still being the one who wants it, not the one who has it. But the moment that shift happens, the moment being changes, reality responds without resistance. Because it always does. Not to what's said, not to what's wished, but to who is being lived. This is the question that naturally comes up once the truth sinks in. Okay, I get that I need to be someone else. But how do I do that? And the answer isn't complicated. It doesn't involve waking up at 5 a.m., scripting for an hour, or pretending to be high vibe all the time. It's much simpler and quieter than that, because being isn't a performance. It's not about acting or pretending. It's about letting go of the need to convince anyone, including yourself, that you're already there and just living like it's true. That version of you, the one who already has the peace, the love, the success, the confidence, the life, it already exists as a state. Neville called it a state of consciousness, and it's not imaginary. It's as real as any mood, any memory, or any version of yourself you've ever lived. The only reason it hasn't become dominant is because the old state keeps getting chosen out of habit, and that's the real starting point. Not trying to force a new self-concept, but noticing how often the old one is being chosen unconsciously. Noticing when the same reactions, stories, and emotions are being picked up like an old playlist you didn't even mean to press play on. So to be someone else, it starts with one quiet decision to stop feeding the old identity. That means when the usual thoughts come up, the ones that say nothing's working or I always get disappointed or why is it taking so long, instead of trying to fix them or silence them, there's a shift in how you relate to them. You don't engage. You don't argue. You don't resist. You simply remember that those thoughts don't belong to the version of you who already has what you want. And that version, the new self, wouldn't be thinking those things at all. That's how you start living differently, not by trying to feel amazing all the time, but by refusing to take direction from the old self anymore. When a trigger shows up, you don't respond from the wounded version of you. You pause, you breathe, you ask, how would the version of me who already has peace respond? And then you do that, not to get results faster, but because it's who you choose to be now. You don't have to feel perfect. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to be loyal to the new version more often than the old one. Because every time you react differently, think differently, feel differently, not because you're forcing it, but because it's coming from a new place, you're reinforcing that new identity. And soon, it won't feel like effort. It won't feel like a game you're trying to win. It'll feel like the most natural thing in the world. Because you'll stop reaching for change and finally start living as it. Just when it feels like things are starting to shift, the old version creeps back in. The same old thoughts, reactions, doubts, fears, they show up uninvited, like they never really left. And that's when most people start panicking. They think, I must be doing it wrong, or I'm slipping back into the old self again. And that panic pulls them even deeper into the state they're trying to leave. But here's the truth that most people don't hear often enough. The old self showing up isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of momentum. It's not proof that you're stuck. It's proof that you're actually moving. See, the old version of you doesn't want to lose its grip. It's familiar, it's practiced, it's comfortable, even if it's painful. And the moment you start stepping into a new state of being, the old identity starts to panic. It senses that its time is almost up, so it fights to stay relevant. It throws old stories at you. It stirs up old emotions. It tries to convince you that nothing's changed. But here's the key, it's not personal. It's just pattern. And once you stop treating it like a problem and start seeing it for what it is, just old energy on autopilot, it begins to lose power. The most important thing you can do in those moments is not react the same way you used to. Not because you're pretending it's fine, but because you finally understand that the reaction itself is what locks the old version back in place. When those thoughts come, when that doubt creeps in, instead of panicking, you pause. You breathe. You observe it like watching a rerun of a show you've seen too many times. You know how it ends, and you're no longer interested. That's how you take your power back. Not by fighting the old self, but by starving it of your attention. Neville never said the old state would disappear instantly. He said persistence in the assumption brings it into fact. That means the new state has to become the most dominant one, not by force, but by focus. You keep turning back to it, even if the old state knocks a little louder some days. You keep returning to who you choose to be, not who you've been. And eventually, the old version will stop showing up, not because you destroyed it, but because you stopped feeding it. This is where real change happens, not in the moments when everything feels easy, but in the moments when the old version tries to return and you choose not to go with it. That choice is the shift. That pause is the transformation. And every time you make it, you're proving to yourself and to your reality that you're no longer available for the life that old version created. You're becoming someone else, not just thinking differently, but living it, moment by moment, choice by choice. The moment you stop reacting like the old version of you, something amazing happens, you start to feel free. Not because life instantly looks different, but because for the first time, you're not needing life to change in order to feel different. And that's the real power. That's where everything starts to shift. But then the next challenge shows up. The mind starts looking for signs. It wants proof. It wants feedback from the outside world to confirm the inner shift. And that's where so many people fall back into the old state. Because when the outside doesn't immediately reflect the inside, doubt creeps back in. This is the part where it becomes clear that real transformation isn't about getting the result. It's about not needing the result to stay in the new self. It's about being okay with the silence, with the in-between, with the slow unfolding of something that's already done in consciousness but hasn't yet ripened in form. Because if you keep needing evidence to stay loyal to the new self, then the old self is still in charge. The version of you that doubts, that waits, that checks, that wonders if it's working, that's not the new identity. That's the same one that was always searching. Neville talked about living in the end, not peeking to see if the end has arrived yet. Living in the end means resting in the knowing that it's done. Not hoping, not begging, not refreshing your reality like it's a browser tab, but moving through your day as if the desire has already been fulfilled and now you're just living in the natural flow of that fulfillment. The version of you who already has the desire wouldn't be obsessing over timing. That version would be present, grounded, calm, even playful, because there's no pressure anymore. There's no proving, just being. The shift isn't about being perfect all the time. It's about being consistent in identity. It's about catching yourself when the old reactions start creeping back in and gently choosing again. Choosing to remember who you now are. Not with force, not with fear, but with quiet certainty. And yes, there will still be moments where the mind questions everything. But that doesn't mean you've failed. It just means the habit of chasing is trying to pull you back. And you don't have to go with it. You don't need to affirm every second or visualize every detail. You just need to stop leaving the state every time reality doesn't move fast enough. Because when you stay loyal to the version of you who already has it, even when nothing around you seems to match that version, that's when you're actually changing your self-concept. That's when embodiment becomes natural. That's when the inner shift becomes the outer change. And it's not because you forced it. It's because you finally stopped chasing and started living. At some point, it clicks. You stop trying to manifest from the outside in. You stop trying to heal, fix, or force your way into a new version of life. And you finally see it. It was never about changing what you have. It was always about changing who you are. The moment you become someone different. Not by words, but by how you carry yourself, how you think, how you respond, how you feel. Reality begins to bend in ways that used to feel impossible. Because reality isn't waiting for you to be perfect. It's responding to your dominant state. And once that state shifts, once you're no longer looking back to see if the old story is still following you, you notice something strange. The triggers don't land the same. The waiting doesn't feel heavy. The desire doesn't feel like a hole in your chest anymore. It's just there, already fulfilled within you. And that's the moment the old version fades. Not because you pushed it away, but because it no longer has a place to live. Neville was never asking anyone to fix the past or earn the future. He was inviting people to choose a new present, to occupy the version of themselves that no longer needs the thing to feel whole. Because in that space, everything becomes effortless. The people change. The opportunities show up. The feelings deepen. Not because you chased them, but because you became the version of you who they were always meant for. So if it still feels hard, if it still feels like a loop, just pause and ask, who am I being right now? Not what am I doing, not what am I thinking, but who am I being? And if the answer doesn't match the version of you who already has the life you want, you get to choose again. Right now, no healing required, no delay needed, just a quiet return to who you already are at your core. Because once identity shifts, everything follows. Every change you've been waiting for is already waiting on you. Not the old you, not the one trying to get it right, but the one who finally remembers it was never about becoming more. It was about becoming true. If this message landed for you in a way that made you see something differently, let me know in the comments what clicked. What old belief did you drop today? What version of you are you ready to stop being? I'd love to hear it.